You know, it's a fairly common criticism that you'll hear a movie was style over substance. But every once in a while, you'll come across an exception where the style is so good and so creative, you're willing to forgive the lack of substance. Well, In a Violent Nature is almost one of those exceptions, but it just doesn't quite pull it off. Welcome back to The Haunted Beard, everybody. Thank you once again for joining me. Today, I want to give you my review for In a Violent Nature. This is a slasher horror film. But before I get into it, I just want to give a quick shout out to my patrons, Milos, Dreamer Bailey, Rick, and Amanda. Thank you so much for helping grow the beard. I greatly appreciate it. You guys are awesome, and I sincerely thank you. So In a Violent Nature is a very fresh, unique twist on the slasher film. And it opens up and we see there is this locket that gets stolen by this group of people out of this fire tower in the middle of the woods. And that awakens the vengeful spirit of Johnny. And he is resurrected as this undead slasher killer who is hell-bent on revenge and ultimately tracking down and retrieving this locket. Now, what makes this film so different and unique really has to do with the overall presentation, and that it is told from the perspective, largely, of the killer. You know, think Friday the 13th from the perspective of Jason, and you pretty much have got your movie. Now, I've said a handful of times on my channel, I am a big advocate of just ambitious movies that take a risk, do something different. I just want to see creative people swing for the fences and just make something different. And In a Violent Nature pretty much checks the box for that. And so I can appreciate it on that front. I respect the director for taking a risk and doing something different. And that is something I'll always say, for better or for worse. And while there are elements of this movie that I quite enjoyed, there are large parts of this movie that I just didn't really jive with at all. As I said in my opening, this really is a good example of a style over substance. However, some of the style in this movie is pretty great, but it doesn't quite kind of outweigh the lack of substance here. Namely, this is a film that is largely devoid of any sort of plot. It's very thin, very basic, and the film is also pretty much devoid of any sort of character work. And the handful of characters that you do get are very thin, and they're also really annoying and obnoxious. They're also pretty stupid, as there's a handful of really dumb decisions that are made. And the acting overall is not great. The dialogue is pretty terrible. Just some bad flirting, bad jokes. Some of the line delivery just feels clunky and not very effective. And so that really hinders the film from a character perspective. And so overall, this is a difficult film to get invested in beyond just the style of it. And I do like the style for the most part. I like some of the kind of first-person POV stuff, almost video game-like feel with some of the shots. I like some of the long extended tracking shots. There's some interesting shot choices and just camera angles and the way certain scenes are edited together. It just feels different. And so there is an element to the visual style and the presentation of it that feels fresh and unique. However, the lack of story and characters really hinders this thing. And this is a film that could honestly be cut down to like a 15 or 20 minute short. And if it was, I think it would be phenomenal, like legitimately great. However, there's so much of this that feels completely devoid of any legitimate reason why we're seeing it and why this is in the movie. And so there are long stretches of the film where basically nothing happens and it feels kind of boring. There's so much walking in this movie where we are just following the killer walking through the woods. And I get it because the director has fully committed to this style, which I respect, but at the same time, I have to be honest and say, for the most part, it doesn't really work. There's a particular scene earlier on in the movie after the first kill where the killer is dragging the decapitated body through the woods, and we get this long tracking shot just following him as he's holding this decapitated body. And that's kind of a cool scene where the longer extended take of it kind of works. Then he goes into this building and finds the firefighter mask, and it's like this 4 or 5 minute scene where all he is just standing there and then sees the mask and is looking at it. And it's like, dude, come on, let's get to the point. And so there are a handful of moments in this movie where I was like, man, that was really great. And then like 30 seconds later, I'm looking at my watch and checking like, how much time does this have left? And so you've got flashes of, I think, borderline greatness followed by long stretches of boredom and inconsequential sequences. Now, I do have to mention the kills in this movie, though, as if you've seen any of the reviews that are already out for this movie, you've probably heard about the yoga kill. And I will say the yoga kill is legitimately fantastic and honestly one of the best kills I think I've probably ever seen. It's awesome. I've never seen anything like it. There's a couple other kills in this movie too that I thought are pretty great. And the practical effects work that they use in here is also quite effective, and it really sells it. And so the film does have to be commended for that. The kills are pretty top-notch, as well as the practical effects. So there is that element that works really, really well. And I will say, I am curious to see what the director Chris Nash does for his next project. I do think he is a talented director and creative. He does have a unique vision, so I am curious to see what he does. And I do respect that he did commit to this style of movie, just the majority of it, though, didn't quite come together for me. So overall, I don't know how to average all that out. I'm probably just going to be right down the middle and give this thing a 5 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on In a Violent Nature. Hit me up down below, like always, if you've seen this. Let me know your thoughts. I'm very curious to hear from you guys on this one because this is such a different type of slasher movie. So let me know down below. Would love to hear from you. That's all I got for you today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button unless you want to be haunted by the beard.